Mo Hashim here with Flat Fee Landlord Property Management. We do property management for single-family homes, townhomes, condos in Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. And today I want to talk about the advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons, whether or not or should you accept Section 8 or public assistance when renting out your home to a tenant. Occasionally, we run into situations when we list properties for rent of tenants that have some type of public housing assistance program for whatever the reason may be. And what this means for assistance from some program or entity to help either pay the full portion or a smaller portion of the rent for the home that they're going to be renting. So what do you need to look for as a landlord that may potentially want to rent out a property to a tenant that qualifies or has public assistance? Well, let's start out with some of the things that are good for a landlord. All right, if the house itself qualifies, meaning that you're not overcharging basically the county government, city government, whatever housing authority that is going to be providing the assistance for the tenant, they come out, they do a market appraisal on the property, and if it falls in line with the current market rates for what they're willing to pay and your home qualifies, that's one step. The second step is the home meets quality safety standards, so there isn't any other work that needs to be done within the home and it qualifies for that. If once approved by one of these entities for public assistance, then pretty much as a landlord, your rent is guaranteed every single month. It doesn't mean that your tenant's going to be paying it. It means that whoever is going to be giving that tenant the assistance is going to be paying the rent every single month to your bank account via direct deposit or a check. Now that's a good thing if you're a landlord. It's guaranteed rent. Now on the other side of it, some things that you want to look out for if you are going to go that route. Guaranteed rent is great, but there are some things you need to look out for. Number one, just because the rent is guaranteed, it doesn't mean your tenant is guaranteed. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people only look at rent and that's it. But if you place somebody in your home, a tenant, you want to make sure that tenant still qualifies. You still want to run an application on them. You still want to run a background check on them. You still want to verify references. You still want to call their previous landlords, because even though the rent may be guaranteed, it's not guaranteed that your home's going to be still standing in one piece if that tenant takes possession of your home. So you want to call previous landlords. You want to run their credit because, like I said, even though the rent's guaranteed, doesn't mean anything else is guaranteed. And you want to make sure the person that goes into your home is going to be treating it with respect, so that when they leave the property and their lease is up, that you're still getting your home in one piece. It's not costing you a ton of money to make it ready again. That's something you want to consider if you're going to go the Section 8 or public assistance housing route. Something else you want to pay really close attention to is whether the entity that's going to be paying the rent is going to be paying the full amount or just a portion thereof. So many times, let's say, just for example, your rent is $2,000 a month. Is the entity that's going to be paying the full $2,000 a month, or is the tenant only qualified for, let's say, $1,000, and then the tenant has to pay the other $1,000? All right, two things here. Number one, you need to make sure that the entity for the rent even allows that. A lot of public assistance does not allow the tenant to pay any additional over what the county or the city has already approved to pay the landlord. So number one, you want to clarify that if there is a difference between what you're asking for rent and what the public assistance program is paying, you got to make sure if the tenant is going to be covering that difference, that they're even allowed to do that. Number two, if they are going to be covering that difference, then you definitely still want to make sure they qualify to make up that difference. Okay, so again, just because you're getting a Section 8 voucher and let's say they're only approved for a portion of the rent, well, you're only guaranteed, let's say, for example, using that same example, if you have a $2,000 rent and the public assistance or Section 8 voucher is only good for $1,000, well, now you're only guaranteed $1,000, not $2,000. So you got to still make sure you run the proper background checks on your tenant to make sure they're going to pay the remaining amount that's due that Section 8 or the public assistance is not going to cover. All right, a third thing you're going to want to consider is the amount of time it takes for you to get paid the first time. In my experience, it has been painfully slow to get the government, any type of government or any public assistance, to pay right off the bat once you have accepted a tenant that is on the voucher program. Typically, it can take anywhere from a month to an additional 2 to 3 months before you even get that first rent check. So you want to make sure you stay in good contact with not only the tenant, because if it is going to take a while before the public assistance voucher kicks in, you got to make sure they're covering that difference and they're allowed to cover that difference based on the program. Number 2, you want to stay in touch with the caseworker that's handling the case on the Section 8 side and make, so you're having good expectations in terms of when you're going to receive your first rent payment. And number 3, as a landlord, you need to account for a possible delay in getting your first rent payment. So if that means it may be 2 or 3 months before you get that first rent payment, you may have to have enough in reserves to cover your mortgage payment until those first rent payments come in. So those are some things to consider with Section 8 vouchers. Biggest takeaways I would tell you is to, just because the rent is guaranteed doesn't mean the tenant's guaranteed. If you are going to accept a Section 8 or public voucher, I would still continue with the application process, the vetting process, and the process for running a background screening, verifying references, all those things. Because like I said, just because the rent is guaranteed doesn't mean you're going to get your home back in one piece being guaranteed. Sometimes the damage caused by a tenant in a property and a guaranteed rent situation may outweigh the benefits of having guaranteed rent, and you may be better off just not going that route if that's the case. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our website at flatfeelandlord.com or call us at any one of our DC area offices.